Okay, so we continue with answering the scope question. So we said we have a plan for the scope. It's similar to the plan for the plan, how to do things. Then we went out and we started collecting requirements using all the different techniques we have seen. And then we came back as a project team to define the scope of work. And to me, this is one of the most challenging tasks as a project manager from my experience, because collecting requirements is fine, so I'm just listening to people, but when I wanted to sit down with my team to define the scope, and that will be the work that has to be done, and this is the core of the project. So there are a lot of parameters involved in defining the scope. It's not just a statement. Now, in terms of the client, when you give these guys PBC, the scope of work, right? What is the process you go through with the client to do that, to define the scope?
First of all, as we discussed before, that the clients give us his needs, his what the word is
requirements, needs, right?
Needs. Then, of course, we have our specifications, and we talk about it. We discuss it with the client, and we send our requirements to the
contract. Yeah. Okay, so it's quite systematic. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say I'm a client and you are the project team, and I want you to build me a mobile phone like this. Okay, so I want you to come up with a scope definition of this mobile phone. Okay, so what will be your scope statement? We call it a scope statement. The output of this process is scope statement, we call it. Okay, so how are you going to describe this mobile phone? What will be in your document to give it to me to sign as the agreed upon scope that you're going to deliver? So what are you going to have in that document? How are you going to describe this phone?
The dimension,
design criteria. Right. So physically, you will describe the phone, color, functionalities of the phone, configuration of the phone,
quality of
the material itself, okay, maybe even the parts inside and all that. So you will give me a comprehensive description of this thing. Enough?
price.
Price in terms of what? We're talking scope here.
How much it will cost you?
Yeah, but we're just talking scope now, not yet cost. Yeah, just scope. Okay? So you describe that. So you describe it and I agree with it. So that's fine. So when you deliver the phone to me, okay, I say, oh, this is the phone we agreed. Yes, I like everything about it, but okay, let me try to make call. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, it's working, but you know what? I don't like its aerodynamics, because when I throw it up in the air, it doesn't come down quickly enough. So I don't like it. Change it, please. So what is the problem here? It has nothing to do with the physical description. It's something to do with what?
The profile, maybe the mock-up, give sample or...
No, but this throwing up and coming down is called what? I'm doing what to the product? I'm testing something, right? So it's what we call the acceptance criteria, right? And this has to be done when? Early. You don't wait for the client to start inventing acceptance testing criteria. It has to be in the scope statement, right? Now, okay, you're gonna give me this phone with the description. We agreed on the testing, but are you gonna give me the phone like this? Or
it should be a presentation.
So it should be in what?
In something, a box.
In a box. Okay.
Proper presentation.
Maybe with an extra battery, maybe with accessories, right? We call this what? Deliverables. So what are the extra things? How are you going to present the final product to me? All these are components in the scope statement that we tend to overlook. So the scope statement here, which we have, it's called the project scope statement, which is the output of scope definition, but it's a document. What do we have in that document? All the things I spoke about, or you guys said, the product or the service description. So the physical, the functionality, the requirements, all the details, the acceptance criteria. So in this document, you have to let the customer know what are the tests that he or she will run on the product in order to accept it. So we don't leave that for chance or for the client aspirations. We specify these things here. Okay? Then the deliverables. So this phone will be delivered to you in a box with the following accessories. Exactly, right? We call these the deliverables because sometimes part of these deliverables, or not most of the time, are not part of the product itself. So if I don't give you a box, it doesn't mean the phone will not work. But you as a client expect the phone to arrive to you in a box, right? So this we call deliverables. Another thing is when you give me the phone and I look at it with the box, everything is fine, and I'll tell you, where is the SIM card, please? And you tell me what? I said, the SIM card. I said, but that's not part of the project. Okay, so this should be mentioned where? Exclusions. We're going to give you a phone in a box that works this way, that you do this testing. However, we're not providing you SIM card with that phone. We're not providing you blah, 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 blah. Now, these exclusions can be anything, right? But usually, what do we put here in exclusions? Because I can say, I'm going to give you a phone, but not TV, but not a laptop, but not a house. It could be anything outside the scope of work. But common sense, what do we put here? Things related to the product that the customer might think it will be part of the exam, but it's not. This is what we mean by exclusion, and it comes only by experience. If you bring in a new, we call a novice project manager, okay, or we call him a rookie, okay, and someone who doesn't have that experience, it will be very difficult for them to list any exclusions. But experienced project managers will say, the customer will think we'll do that as well. So we better list it down here. And remember, we're still in the planning process. So if you list here SIM card, and now you bring the plan to the customer, to the client, and he sees here SIM card, he can say what? He can tell you, you know what? I want you to provide me SIM cards. So what do you do simply? You revise your scope. So now it's part of your scope. Okay? So it helps, it instigates discussion. It encourages discussion, right? To clarify what's in and what's out of scope. Because from my experience, this is one of the very difficult things to do, i.e., drawing that line on what are you going to do. So where is that line? Okay? So the best thing to do is to describe what's in and what's out. And automatically you will have a borderline drawn. Okay? But if you just do this, we risk what? We risk what is known as scope creep. You heard this term? Scope creep is what?
في معلومات ناقصه في ممكن تعمل كونفليكت في العقد.
And then tomorrow, scope is like this. And then tomorrow, the scope. What is happening to the scope? It's getting what? Creeping, exactly. Scope creep means when the scope gets bigger and bigger, but what? In a very quiet way, without you realizing. Suddenly, instead of providing a phone, you're providing a telecom tower as a result of that creep. The word creep in English means what? يزحف بهدوء. Something is crawling. Huh?
زي زحف الخرسانة. كيف بتاع الخرسانة.
Okay?
لا المفروض يكون عامل له توضيح بالكونترا يعني.
Yes, exactly. Has to be clarified. Exactly. And these are the components to help us into locking the scope. So whenever something happens, say no outside the scope. Okay? If you keep accepting little requests from the client, can you please just change this a little bit? It won't affect anything. Please just do this. Okay? 40 something. I can hear it, right? Okay? We're gonna do that, right? But then suddenly it has bam. Okay? So you have to manage this very well. You have to manage your borders very well. Okay? So these are called exclusion. It's part of the scope statement document. Then it's also important in your scope statement to tell the client what are the constraints you are working within. محددات. So in there you tell him, listen, I'm gonna build you this phone with the budget you're providing me, which is 5,000 dirhams or riyals. So this phone will not exceed that much. Constraint number 2, you ask me to build this phone or to design a phone and produce it within a month. So another constraint, right? You're asking me to build this tower in a certain location. Another constraint. So what's the use? Why is it useful to list the constraints? Why is it important to list it in that document? It will help in what?
It's more costly later.
Because it will justify certain actions you do. Okay? So if suddenly the client for Ta'ziz Tower suddenly received a bill for 100,000 riyals, okay, for breaking some rocks in the foundation. He encountered some rocks. Okay? So he says, what? You tell him, oh yeah. Why? He said, because one of the constraints is we have to build it in this location. You did not give us the option to choose the best location. Right? So the constraints will justify certain actions that you do because it's there, it's listed. If you give me the option to choose the best location, maybe I'll choose a location with no rocks. Right? And so on and so forth. So it's important to list these constraints, that things that will limit your options in doing things. And then the final thing is assumptions. Okay? Assumptions. Assumptions are things that you think about and you think it will happen. They are true. Okay? But not necessarily people know about it. So, Mazin, please, can you go and you find the car downstairs, okay, with the driver, he will take you to the hotel. Right? So I assume that the driver knows the hotel. Logic, right? So if Bashmandis have told me, the driver is waiting for you downstairs, he will take you to the hotel. Right? So you see here the gap. So I think, yeah, okay, so Ihab knows that I live in a certain hotel. Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't, but the driver should know. So I get on the car. Take me to the hotel, please. Which hotel? I said, you don't know which hotel I'm staying in? I said, no. I said, but I don't come from the month. I know the name, but I don't know the location. Right? So assumption listing helps in that. So if Ihab tells me the driver is downstairs, so what do? I challenge my assumptions. So does he know the hotel? Yeah, I would say, let me ask him. Hello, do you know the hotel? No, we don't know the hotel. So let's find someone who knows the hotel, right? So listing the assumptions help us in clarifying the scope, right? It helps us. So when you list the assumption and say, well, I assume Ta'ziz Tower that you have a permission for construction already issued. That's an assumption as a project manager I make. The client might look at it and say, no, we don't have it. So it becomes part of the scope and so on and so forth.
Let's do it.
Hmm?
Let's do it.
Sorry?
You have to do a project the same
I'm just wondering, we start excavation, touring everything, and then the client's brother don't have it. And the whole deposit amount for six months.
Exactly, right? So this is very common, it happens a lot. And this can be solved by getting into this habit of listing the assumptions. Listing our assumptions on paper, challenging them all the time. It helps clarifying that. Okay? And again, it's all to be. So these are the components of the scope statement, which is the outcome of define the scope. Okay, so we collected the requirement. Now, as a team, we define the scope in a scope statement. Now we are ready to break this scope down into manageable pieces. Because to build something big, we have to do what? Break it down to pieces. As they say, you cannot eat an elephant in one go. How do you eat an elephant?
In pieces.
Exactly. One piece at a time. Okay? How do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. Okay? So, the tool we have, if you ask me to build you a plane, or a car, or a house, or a skyscraper, I will have to break it down into manageable pieces, what we call the WBS, the work breakdown structure, and we all know how a work breakdown structure looks like, right? It's a hierarchy of smaller pieces. So if we have looks something like this. Okay. So if we have in our projects, let's say, I'm just going to give you a simple example rather than a construction project. So if you're building an aircraft, okay, what are the components making an aircraft? أجزاء الaircraft إيه هي؟ طيار. The body, okay, we call that technically the fuselage. We call it the fuselage, which is الشكل الأسطواني الأنبوبة. Okay, engine, wings, wheels or landing gear. Okay. Sorry, أيوة, the interior. Okay, we call it the interior. Okay, and we could have other things as well. Okay, now wings. How many wings do we have? Left and right wings. Okay, so I have left wing, right wing. Okay, in the interior, what do we have? المضيفات. المضيفات ايه؟ The air hostesses are what in this project? They should be what? In terms of scope statement, المضيفات وين؟ out of scope, right? وأنا أحب تدخلهم في السكوب. Main cabin. Okay, what else? Passenger cabin. Oh, main cabin is the passenger. So maybe the cockpit. Let's say the cockpit here. Okay, Danny, let's say, let's just put furniture in general, whatever, right? So the idea is I'm keeping breaking down things until I reach a level here, or doesn't matter which level. Where do I stop? Where should I stop and say, this is okay? I can stop at this stage. When do I stop breaking down? Clear in what sense? There are some criteria. Testing and commissioning. Okay.
That's the end of
the breakdown. No, I'm talking here about breaking down something big into smaller pieces. Where should I stop the
If you
breakdown.
cover the whole scope.
Okay, because here I'm covering the whole scope.
When you collect them all together, you get
You get that, yes. So because I'm starting with the big here.
Select to share this area.
Testing and commission. You're thinking along the different
When it
dimensions.
can be divided more.
Yeah, but how do I know that? What's the criteria that I cannot divide it more?
Can service main items.
Sorry?
So I like to save this area.
Uh-huh.
It can service the main items.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. So let me give you an example here to see what I mean. So here I said left wing and right wing. Now the left wing has some mechanical part and maybe electrical part. Okay? The mechanical parts has something to do with whatever the type of mechanics we have. So we keep breaking down, or shall we stop here at left wing and right wing? When do I stop breaking down in the WBS? When, number one, you can estimate the duration of completing this work, criteria number one. Criteria number two, when you can estimate the cost of completing this work. And criteria number three, when you can assign it to someone or a group of people. These are the three criteria I used and to say to myself, okay, I can stop here, right? I'm gonna write it, okay? So criteria number one, when you can estimate the duration. Criteria two, when you can estimate the cost. Criteria three, when you can assign it to someone or a group of people to do it. Okay, so هاي المعايير. When you reach these three, you stop breaking down further. Okay, so now you have a more or less logical work breakdown structure. WBS stands for work breakdown structure. عارفين بالعربي ايه؟ WBS
طب يعني انا مش فاهم يعني ايه لو انا اشوف الديوريشن والكوست اوقف عن
خلاص
you stop breaking down يعني خلاص ما في داعي عندك to break it down further. ايه في الجزئيه المعينه. work breakdown structure بالعربي هيكل تجزئه العمل. هيكل تجزئه العمل. Okay, so this work breakdown structure helps us as a project team to take this aircraft and have people working on certain areas, specialized people. Because to build an aircraft, you need mechanical engineers, designers, electrical engineers, right? So many people doing different parts, right? So these different parts become your project activities. They become your project activities. If you do like what you said earlier, if we do the cockpit and this, we do the interior. If we do the right wing and left wing, we do the wings. If we do everything here, we have the aircraft. So we work bottom up. Let me go. So this is called the work breakdown structure. And it's the final stage of defining the scope. Flip. A WBS نفسه, we have types of WBSs. This type is called using major deliverables. Because I'm using what? The major component of the aircraft. But we can compose the WBS using other techniques. Like you guys do WBSs based on what? Project phases. Most of the WBS in construction go, what do you have? What's the first component? Design, right? And then what? Okay, exactly. So you follow the phases of the project. So you're breaking down by phases, not by major components or major deliverables. And it's another technique. For example, if I have an IT project, okay? So let's say I want to build a financial system. Okay, so financial, Oracle Financial, IT, to automate all the finance work in PVC. Okay, so the first one is I collect requirements, also requirement collection, then I will design, then I will develop the software, then test, then implement. So this becomes my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 phases of my project work. Okay, to collect requirements, I do this and this and this to design and do this and so on. So this is called creating the WBS using phases. Okay, sometimes if I have a major project in KSA to build, let's say, hospitals across Saudi Arabia, I will have a project in Riyadh, a project in Dammam, a project in Jeddah, and a project in Abha. So this is called forming the WBS using sub-projects. Okay, be it geographical location or so. And you can also have pick and mix. So in the same WBS, you can have part of it by phases, part of it by major deliverables, part so you can combine. But in general, in construction and IT, we use phases. Okay, in projects like building things like aircraft and cars and ships, we use major deliverables. You guys use phases, I think. Okay. The last batch, one of the guys participating brought a sample of a WBS to us. So maybe tomorrow, if you can bring me a sample of a WBS, you have some samples. Yeah, we can have a look at a WBS. Now the WBS, what I always say when I walk to a project manager's office, I expect to see a WBS on the wall. Why? Project manager, if you're managing a project, I expect to see in your office the WBS on the wall. Why? So I should see that shape in front of you all the time. Why? What's the importance of the WBS? What can we use it for? So you have all the scope in front of you. Exactly. And most importantly, you can use it as a tool to communicate your project to other people. It's a simple tool because it's visual. So I'm working on this project. This project has 4 major components. This component consists of these 2 components. Engineer Rehab is working on this. Mazen is taking care of this. And this part we're actually outsourcing. We're facing some problems here, so use it as a communication tool. Okay, and it's very powerful. You also use it with your team members to make sure everybody understands their role in the project. How do you develop the WBS? With your team members. So you don't develop this on your own. You have to include your team members to come up with this division of work. Why? Because they know best. So if I was the project manager for this aircraft, I cannot be both an electrical engineer and a mechanical engineer and a pilot and a designer, right? So I'll involve the right people to help me in this process of breaking down the project. Okay? So by answering these, so by going through these 4 processes, now we can say we have scoped our project. Now we have a solid scope. We have a scope statement that consists of all the things we've seen, and we also now have broken down our work into more manageable pieces. So we can go ahead and answer the next question, which is how long? Okay? Now let me go back to our sample project, which is the Aziz Tower. Let's just put a very rough WBS for it. Okay, so we have the major. Give me an example of a couple of components in that project. Steel structure.
Substructure. Foundations.
Substructure. Okay.
Then you have superstructure. Superstructure. Then you have finishes.
Finishes.
And electrical and mechanical.
Okay, so let's just take these five, right? Now, in the substructure, what are the things you do? What are the
storing, watering, mining walls, pipe laying,
Just give me three examples. Excavation,
mining, fireworks,
and dewatering. Okay.
and tests.
And
حطينا دكتوراه في التست.
okay, superstructure, the same thing. Same steps or different? Okay, finishing.
Finishing, we have aluminum.
plaster, ceramic tile, painting,
Aluminum cladding, glazing with the cladding.
Glazing. Okay, so let's just take these three: paint, glazing, and aluminium. Okay, electrical and mechanical.
We have
HVAC,
fire system,
HVAC and
firefighting,
plumbing.
current.
Okay, yeah, electrical and mechanical. Okay, so just let's take 3, 6, 8. These tasks we have to do, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, now excavation involves what? So excavation involves doing what? Some digging, and, okay, right, okay, and piling. It's another. Okay, right. So now we start talking about. So I'm just using this as an example here, and I'm going to give my WBS some coding. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. This becomes 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So let me just put these numbers here: 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 4, 1, and 4, 2. Okay. Now, this is our project that consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tasks or activities. Okay. Now, the question is, how long will this project take? Okay. So, what are the things we have to do to answer that question from this stage? Okay, let's assume we don't have a target date. So we started from scratch. Okay, I think I have to use my ball. So whoever has the ball can talk. Yeah? Okay?
If you want to make management, you must measure this. Make estimation.
For what?
For this item.
So the first thing I should do is to estimate the duration for each task. Is that the first thing, or there's something before that I need to do?
Get the production rate or the
Right.
time for each activity, then I can get the estimation.
Exactly. So define the activities. Yeah. So let's assume these are activities. Excavate. Let's assume that these are the activities. So.
Next step of sequence.
Yeah, but before that, I want you to think of something before estimating the duration of the activity. Sequence speaking, maybe no issue, but to tell me how long does something take, I need to know what before. Thank you very much. Okay, so I need to know the resources.
The production rate.
Okay, right. So I just want you for a while to pull yourself away from your construction environment, and let's just talk a little bit in a very simplistic way. Okay, so if I want to know how long will it take a painter to paint this room, right? How long in terms of effort, right? So the first thing I should do is think of the resources that the painter needs, right? Or whatever before I can estimate. Why? So let's say he said, oh, it will take about 4 hours to paint the room. Okay? So comes in the painter and he said, well, you know what? The paint you need for this room is a special type of paint, right? And to order that paint, right, we need 3 weeks. So how long will the task take? 3 weeks.
From experience.
Yes.
For a good,
Right.
I don't know what is the specs, what's the type of paint or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay, then
Exactly.
for the painter to take 4 hours, I am the one who's going to put this was from the past experience or from the database I have.
Exactly.
I know that Arabs will do this much rate per hour or per day.
Right.
Other nations are doing this.
Exactly.
Then this will be around split, so then they will accommodate by get the duration.
Exactly. So you do it, but you do it in your head.
Yeah.
Right?
Some
It's your
database.
experience.
We have already
Database. Some database.
Right.
we
Right.
have
Right.
already invitation the cube meter.
I'm
This machine can make in 1 day or 1 hour or
Yes.
quantity. This quantity
Okay.
I make it for this for all.
Right. So let's say you don't have this database. Let's say you don't have that database. Let's assume you don't have that database. Right?
Have the experience.
Yes, exactly. So the process goes like this. You need to specify the resources needed, okay, before I can estimate the duration. Why? Why does the type of resources affect the duration of a task or an activity? Does it or does it not?
I cannot use the machine in this excavation. Should be have to be
Exactly. Right. So
manual
think-
excavation.
Exactly.
That's the missing part. It's 9 meter deep.
Right. So when we are wise project managers, before committing to saying, oh, it will take 1 week, or it will take 2 weeks, we need to step back and think about the resources needed before we can commit to dates with senior management. It's good practice to do that. Because experience tells you, oh, this will only take a week. But you're making dangerous assumptions here, right? The availability of resources, of machinery, the skill of the workers, and so many things. But when I think about all these things, I can come up with duration that are more realistic. That's why we have estimating the resources coming before estimating the duration of the activities. Right? So that's very important to think about. Right? So let's go back now to answering the question of how long. So let's say I do this. So I came up with duration estimation for each of these activities, right? So let's say I have here 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 1 week, 12 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 2 weeks, and 9 weeks. So let's assume these are the duration in weeks. Okay? So Bashmandis, you mentioned something. You said we should do what?
Sequence.
So we don't just go say, oh, the project will take 3 plus 4 plus 1, but we have to first sequence it. What does sequencing mean?
Which
can
start, which I can
Exactly. Exactly. Based on what? Based on our so and logic. كده? So I cannot do this before that, right? So we do a brainstorm.
It's not for experience. Logical. Not from your experience.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yes, that's fine. But I'm just trying now to take this experience of logic and break it down into more logical steps. Okay? Because sometimes you do things in a very logical way, but you need to explain the mechanics of things, right? So with the team, you say, well, the first thing we need to do is maybe do, for example, piling. After piling, we do this. Then we can start in the, for example, aluminium and the paint and the glazing at the same time. Then we'll do this. Then. So you order your project activities based on the logical sequencing from left to right. And this we call the network diagram. And it will look something like this. Okay, so how long will this project take? So how long? How long will a project like this take? 9. So 4 plus 3 plus 12 plus 1 plus 2 plus 9. Okay? If a project is sequenced this way, how long? 4 plus 3 plus 4 plus 1, right? If a project is sequenced this way, right? So the sequencing will affect the duration, right? So that's why we have sequencing the activities, estimating the duration, right? Estimating the resources, and then, so let's just go back to our original and ask the final question. Okay, so we have this project, and this project will start, and I want you to do this individually. And I want each one of you to give me a date. Okay, so if this project starts today, is the 1st of December, when are we going to deliver?
4 weeks, 5 weeks.
I want you to do it individually. These are weeks. Yeah. And I don't want you to ask me any question. Okay, and I want you to come up with the delivery date here. Individually, so I need an answer from each person. Okay, and can you please write your date in this piece of paper, please? There you go. إذا بدأنا يوم 1 ديسمبر هنخلص امتى؟ When is the delivery date? Don't ask me any question. I will not answer any question. Yes, the date. الأيام the duration weeks. Okay. 1/12 اللي هو النهارده. Okay, you have a paper. Can you just pass this to مش مشارك معانا؟
أنا مشارك بس ما أنسى.
Okay. تاني عن التصويت.
انت عارف انت عارف بس مش مكتوب. انت عارف.
جاوب تعالى بالتصويت.
1/9 ايوه 12 4 5 2 3 4. Okay, and I ask these questions مش عشان اختبركم بقدر ما يعني to get a discussion going about something. Okay, so you ready? نعم؟ اوكي. انت هتحسبها بالكالكوليتر ولا بالكالندر؟ مش مشكلة بس أنا عاوز تواريخ.
عملت لك جواب يعني.
أيوه.
5/7.
أوكي لا خلي تاريخك لنفسك يعني just keep your date to yourself and be the same. Thank you.
مش معانا صحيح ما لازم مش معانا.
ده 9. Okay, just write it down here, please. مهندس انت حاسس الشغل وقت التاريخ ولا عادي المشكله؟
ما اعرف ما سكرت.
انا خايف كلكم تطلعوا غلط. اوكي سعيد you no I want a date yes please
شوية
كده ان هم لو تاثر
طبعا هي مشروع من 8 activities guys is that difficult كلها 8 activities
هي المشكلة ان الموضوع يبقى سهل كده يبقى صعب.
زي ال number of circles
ممكن يبقى عندي
لا لازم الاجازات اللي هي يوم الجمعه
okay
sorry
okay guys I'm just gonna give you 30 seconds this 30th of August 2015 yeah 15 okay okay يا باشمهندس okay it's okay this one is yours okay how long do you need okay طيب can we thank you okay guys but let's first of all why do you think I said I'm not gonna answer any question exactly because there will be a huge number of questions I have to explain to you for what are some of these questions
الاجازات مشموله ولا لا؟ الشهر ده كام يوم؟
الشهر ده كم يوم موجود في الكالندر
الاجازات موجوده ولا لا؟
الاجازات موجوده في الكالندر معروف الاجازات الرسميه صح؟
انت هيبقى نص اسبوع
ها
شامل
ها
يوم الجمعه مشمول
so I need to tell you what the company's policy working policy كده we work weekend or we work 5 days a week and عندنا one shift or 2 shifts right and lots of inputs so this is called calendar days calendar so you take your project duration 1, 9, 5, 4, 12 blah 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 are called the project or the task duration when you start putting dates you have to take into consideration your project what calendar okay so if this task takes 1 day to complete. And we start our project today. But today is holiday because it's the birthday of the CEO. For 3 days. Right? So we finish in how many days? 4 days. Calendar. Right? So those who put 575757, that's fine. Some people put 30th of August. Who put 30th of August? Can you tell us your assumption, please? What's our assumption you made?
My assumption is, when they put the date, the week total weeks, 31 weeks, according to my calculation. And minus the weeks, there is 1 day holiday. So 31 weeks plus 31 days.
Right. So yes, calculate
I convert it into maybe the date is different, but this is my calculation. The weeks plus the 31 days of each week.
Okay. So how many days a week? Working days.
6 days a week.
6 days a week.
So you have 31 weeks plus 31 days.
Okay. Everybody assume the 6-day week, or some people assume the 5-day week. You all assume the 6-day week. Yeah. Did you take into consideration Ramadan time?
I think not Ramadan.
Which Ramadan? Any holidays? Any other holidays? Which Eid هنا? Yeah. Okay. So when we translate this to the calendar, this is what we do. We put the tasks here, and then we have our calendar here, like this. Let's say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so this is December, for example. And then we'll have January, February, and so on and so forth. So we take all our tasks, we transfer, and this, of course, some software will do this on your behalf. Okay? So we say 1, the first task here. Okay? And then we have here, today is what? Monday? Monday, right? Yeah. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You break what? Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday. Only Friday? Okay? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So this is Friday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah? This is Friday as well. Okay? So you cancel out all the Fridays. You receive notification that the 9th of December will be off. Okay? We know that on the 11th of December, we will be working only half shift. Okay? The 4th of December, we're working double shift. So you get all the information loaded to your calendar, and then you map your activities here. Okay? So if you have this activity taking 12 days, for example, and it starts here, it will go 1, 2, 3. What will happen here? Double shift. 4, 5. Right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 22.
This one starts after.
Sorry?
This one starts after.
No. I'm just giving an example on how to, when you load your information into the calendar, how will it affect the duration? Okay? So that's why first of all we have to design our calendar, our project calendar, and then we upload the tasks into it to get the final calendar days. And these are the days that management worry about. They do not understand, the project duration is 15 weeks or 52 weeks. They want to know what? When? Give me a date. December, October, November, August. I don't care about your project management terminology. This is your problems. I want a date. So don't commit to a date before you do your homework. This is very important when it comes to committing to dates. Okay? We tend to say, 10 days, طب النهارده first فيها 10 أيام, right? This is how we tend to calculate. But it's more complicated than that. Okay? So let's look into these steps one by one and see what's happening here. Okay, so we kick off with a plan for our schedule or schedule. Both right. You can either say schedule or schedule. So this is an overall plan on how you will compose your project management or your project schedule plan as we've seen in scope. The first thing is we define the activities. So we take our WBS, which is called the scope baseline here. We decompose. So we have something called decomposition. And the same tool and technique we use for the WBS. To decompose something means what? To decompose something, تحليل, exactly. To break it down into smaller pieces. So we go from our WBS, we decompose into a list of activities. And this is what we did here. These are the lowest level of my WBS here. Remember, we took the lowest level and we defined the activities needed to create these things, and then, right, we started describing each activity. Now, sometimes if you have projects that span for long years, so maybe we have a 15-year project. Do we have such projects? 15, 20 years?
Maximum 20.
Maximum?
4 years.
4 years?
Current project.
No, not your projects. In general,
Yes.
you have projects that go for, like what?
Spaceship projects. Nuclear power.
Exactly.
In long time.
Exactly.
When we have a project, 10-year project.
Uh-huh.
But it is a lease agreement.
What like
After
what?
we complete,
Mhm.
maintenance.
Maintenance, yeah, but that's not really a project, is it?
No, it's fine. When we speak about
It might be a contract. Mhm. But I mean project in terms of the time needed to create something new. So nuclear plants take about 12 to 15 years. Yeah. Now, huh? Yeah, spaceship program and stuff. Yes. Right. So if you are a project manager for a project that takes 15 years to complete, and you're asked to put a plan for that, right? So you will put a plan for 15 years, you'll compose a plan for 15 years and submit to management. What are you going to do? So if we start today, 2012, our project delivery date is 2027. Okay, so tell me how. مراحل زي ايه يعني. So you will plan for how many years? So 20 to 2017. You will have a detailed plan here. And what about the remaining period? So you plan for 5 years, not 5, let's say 3 years, and then I have a high level plan for that. When I get to 2017, what do I do? Detail and high level plan, and so on. And this technique we call the rolling wave planning, because it looks like a waves. Okay, so a rolling wave planning is a technique we use when we have long projects, projects that span long years, because it doesn't make sense to put a plan for 15 years, right? Things will change a lot. So you plan for 2-3 years, and then high level for the remaining, and then as you go, you improve on that. So this is one of the exam questions you get about the rolling wave planning. Definition of rolling wave planning. They tell you rolling wave planning is a technique used for A, marine projects. Okay. B, projects that bridges project, something to do with water. So you think, rolling wave maybe, right? 3 or C, projects that span long years. So that's the answer. Okay, so rolling wave technique is a planning technique we use for long-term projects. So you come up with your activities. So let's say, give me a typical activity in your environment. in construction, any activity. The name of the activity. Dig something or excavate. What exactly excavation? Give me one activity in that area. Excavate, we call it. Okay, so excavate. Okay, how long does it take for a typical project? Excavation. On average. Average.
3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yes.
Okay, so 3 weeks. Okay? Now, let's say I'm a new project manager, I just joined PBC and I received this plan. Okay? And there's a task I have to start tomorrow and it's called excavate. Okay? Do you think I need more information about it? Yes. Like what? What else?
Soil report.
So I need a soil report. What else? Do I need to know the location? Permit, location, data. So where will this available equipment, people involved, blah blah blah. This is called activity attributes. Activity attributes. Do you use MS Project? You are planning? Do you use any tool? No, Primavera. Okay. So in I'm not sure about Primavera, but in MS Project, when you double click a task or an activity, you get like the activity attributes. So you have an area, a small window with more details. So for every activity you have in your project you define, you need to have with it like a dictionary for that activity. It helps you and it helps other people looking into that activity. We call that activity attributes. Okay? Along with that, when you define the activities, you have to define your milestones. Milestones. What does milestones mean when it comes to activities? Milestones are what? But are they any targets? Or they are what? Major. Right. So exactly. So if I say let's kick off here, and this is the delivery date. Okay. In December 2015, we will do this. In January 2016, we'll do that. In May 2017, so we call these milestones. They are events in our projects where they represent what? Major deliveries or maybe achievements. Right? Or it could be, let's say, toll gates for financing, for example, or handover, or whatever. We call these milestones. What's the benefit of milestones? What are the benefits of milestones? They give us control points. Right? So, for example, whenever I'm driving from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, when I get to Rantut is the halfway distance, I take a look at my watch. Because this is what? Almost the halfway. So I look into my watch and I say, well, it took me 45 minutes to get here. So I will get to Dubai in another 45 minutes. So milestones give you the tools to look back and assess your performance. Exactly. Okay. They also help in marketing events. So when you're marketing your project, you say, this is our project. We will kick off here. In 2015, we will launch this. In 2016, we will deliver that. Right? So they act as a marketing tool. And it's always also the best way to communicate your project schedule to who? Senior people who don't like details. So if you take this to a senior person, excavate, piling, aluminium, do you think they'll enjoy it? They don't care. They just want to know when will that bloody building be ready, right? Okay. So this is the milestone list we have. Okay. You wanna take a 5 minutes refreshment break? Just 5 minutes. Just look away. You can sit where you are. It's just to break from we've been here an hour. عارفين الاتنشن سبان بتاعت الهيومن بين كم؟ صارت الان يعني age of technology. What's the attention span? The time where you can concentrate fully on something.
30 minutes?
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
14? Yes, so I just said 15. Just عشان يكون nice.
1 minute only.
I'm 1 minute deviate.
depend on age يعني مثلا 15 واحد زي هذا 5 minutes
لا لا انت عارف حتى بالنسبه للكيدز even shorter للاطفال. ايوه الاطفال دلوقتي talk about 2 to 3 minutes عشان التكنولوجي and you can see it from your kids they cannot really concentrate for longer period. عشان كده حتى بقت البرامج الدراسيه والحاجات كلها based on الالعاب. يعني زمان خلاص قمنا دي امتياز مش محاضره ساعه ونص. Same thing because of all the information block you have and the email and you always want to be on the move. You always want to look at your phone.
Okay.
5 minutes 5 minutes
5 minutes.
كيف؟ سوري؟ هي دي المحاضرات الجامعيه وكده يعني بس حتى ال 40 دقيقه it's not fully concentration. هي دي بيسموها في فرق بين الاتنشن سبان وبين الاتنشن فيتنس mental fitness. في فرق. Fitness يعني I can sit in a lecture room for 40 minutes. That's called mental fitness. Okay? But within a 40 minutes, my attention span. يعني you cannot listen to someone for more than 10 minutes before you wander somewhere else.
حسب الموضوع.
بالظبط عشان كده لازم يكون بالظبط. انا حاسس دلوقتي لو وقفت هنا واتكلمت عن بعد 10 minutes انتوا كلكم هتكونوا نمتوا خلاص. Okay, but what do? I talk about something, I ask you a question. Can you write this down, please? What do you think? أعمل حاجة مختلفة. So you have to vary عشان to get the attention all the time. حصل قبل كده نمت في محاضرة أنت؟ نمت في اجتماع؟ لا اجتماع.
انا اعرف واحد ثاني.
انا؟
لا جيت انت عارف مين؟
انا عارف لا عارف.
once إن حسيت إن أنت خلاص.
بس كلامك والله مش مهندس. لو انت مش حابب
من الأول ما بتروحش.
والله لو قعد 100 سنه
اديهم فرصة.
يعني انت ساعات لو شرط بتقابل معاك
حاضر يا امين حاضر يا امين روح يا امين.
لا بدي باشمهندس سامع هو النهارده
جوعني انا بالاحسن.
انت بس في اوضاع غصب عنك لازم تسمع. دي نوع ايه؟
لما يكون مع المدير مثلا يعني ما انت قلتها خلاص غصب عنك.
في ناس ثانيه منهم حتى انا بالاحسن. لازم تبقى قوي من صح.
دي اسمها عالم تخاف من الحشيش.
كلك حريه.
دي غير عالم تخاف ما تختشيش.
لا والله هو ساعات الواحد بيعمل لنفسه كده قامه ان ان الناس تخاف منه. بتبقى مفيده جدا. مفيده جدا لان ما حدش يدخل لك الا في المشاكل. المشاكل ما بتوصلش. لكن غير كل شويه يقول لك السلام عليكم وعليكم السلام مش عارف ايه.
دي اداره ناجحه.
لا الاداره بالخوف يعني؟
لا ناجحه طبعا.
بالارهاب يعني؟
لا مش طبيعي. ساعات ايه بيطمعوا في
دي قصه ثانيه اللي دخلت في قصه ثانيه. انا بقول لك يعني انت دلوقتي انت ممكن تدير بان انت تقعد شوتنج مع الناس كلها. اول حاجه انت هتتعب.
صح.
سيبك بقى منهم هم. اول حاجه انت هتتعب. ثاني حاجه مش هتستفاد من غير من الناس اللي هي فعلا هتفيدك. خد بالك انت بتمشي مشوار في الاخر نفس ان الناس هي اللي هتفيدك هم كده مش
زي
هيغيروا.
مبادرة مؤسس.
واللي مش هيفيدك والله ما هو هيفيدك.
زي مبادرة مؤسس.
ايوه
كل واحد مقتنع بايه؟
باللي هو بقى الله ينور عليك. فانت حاجه
دي. كده دخلنا في
انما هتقعد بقى توجع قلبك والله ما يفيدك غير اللي هو
ولو بنقول لهم ايه رؤيه مستقبليه اساس هيعمل كذا وكذا وكذا لا ولا يطلع بقى لا ابدا لا العبط
وبعدين ما يطلع
صح بجد
لا يطلع
زي كده
بره.
ما يطلعش ولا تفضل عادي بس مفيش مشكله البس خالص
عايز اقول لك والله من دي 1 سنه في حصري قلت انا مش عايز اصلا احاسب مبارك على الكتب.
يعني هي ناس اول سعيده مش ممكن يطلع براءه ده احنا ننزل
مستحيل
ماشي ولا كلمه خلاص
مرسي السبب.
مرسي السما هو اللي هو
بص هو السبب. ما هو اللي قاعد محمد مبارك. انا اقول لك تاني
واحد كان هياخد براءه
هو كان واخد 25 سنه. كان واخد 25 سنه يا معلم.
25 سنه
ما تعرفش هيجوبه بقى. ومين اللي عنده قرار رئاسي من السيد العظيم محمد مرسي ونائبه الملاكي.
ليه بقى؟ عشان كان عايز يعدمه.
طب ما يعدمه
غبي يا باشمهندس غبي يا باشمهندس يعني يا باشمهندس راجل ميت اساسا. هو راجل ميت. ده الراجل اللي هيمشي معايا وتكلفه الناس اللي هتشيله الناس اللي هتاخد الحفله الحفله اللي هيشيله هو اصلا ميت. بس بقول لك ايه بقى؟ هو تفكير وبيفكر للناس امريكا ورزنا افلام
احنا بين ابويا زمان
راح في المكان الفلاني بس هو ده ذكي جدا بيعمل كل واحد ما تعرفش تقعد بقى على الاثنين ورزقنا الخيالات
في واحد تاني زمان
لذلك الصين ما عملتش
المدني حد مننا مين؟
لازم استعرض
90 مليون ازاي؟
لا مين الوحيد اللي كان ممكن يتفضل ده معقول يعني
ماشي
بس ما حدش يقدر يقف جنب ما عندوش الكاريزما الشعبيه هتجيب مين هرب وانت عارفين التركه زي
هو بس هو مش عايز يطلع.
ده اصلا واحد ما هو شو بره المتقدمين هي ماشي لا انت تشتغل على بلدك ولا شرب ولا مش عارف ايه ده عملك كفاءه ولا بس انا مش ابوش مش
كلامك كويس
في قانون بجد
بس بالنسبه لك اللي انت بتقرا انت كده طالما الاستاذ على فكره بس البلد اللي مش مستقبلها يعني لو المرسل لما يقول لك الصرف فرق ايده وده غلط
عادي
هيدخل في الاول
عشان الراجل اللي قال كده نديله
انت يعني انت دلوقتي لو الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم كان واقف في مكه كل الناس تسال كان هيحصل له ايه؟
ما هيطلع براءه
في كل وقت له مرحله مع انه بيتكلم صح هو مش بيتكلم غلط بس خدها غلط
هم مش بيديروا مع بعض اصل
الحمد لله
جيش والاخوان ايد واحد ولا زالوا المصلحه بتحكم قاضي جنائي هيحكم ازاي؟
حتى في فيلم كده احنا لازم زي قال له القفص
كان حاجه كان واحد فتح محلات محل وكده راح قال لك ايه رحت صاحب في البلد ولا عاوز فكان لو سيد المحل 20 جنيه قال لي ده واحد فبقول له الرئيس شريك شركه قال لي انت عبيط ولا ايه؟
كله بس تمام
بقول له يمكن يا مصيبه بس عشان راجع
خليه
بيقول شكله بس فيعني ايه احنا ما شاء الله هو مسلم
لا مهندس مرسي
انا
رايي ان مرسي ده اتظلم يعني لان هو هقول لك ليه هقول لك انا من وجهه نظري كشخص انا بتكلم مع مرسي كشخص
مين ده؟ لا اللي هم كتير
الجديد ده اللي ملوش يعني
كله له اخطاء في برامج بره اوروبا على اخطاء الناس دي مش ناس فات عليها عادي يعني
بس على الاقل في اوروبا على الاقل في اوروبا اللي بيشرب خمره ده بيبقى مثلا يوم السبت يوم السبت والحد بس. لكن احنا عندنا لازم سكران من اول اليوم ده.
في اوروبا ممنوع في الشارع.
لا بيعرف يقرا ولا بيعرف يكتب ولا بيعرف هو السيسي في اوروبا. ده يعيب لك انت رئيس الجمهوريه بس انت من
هو بس شايفه
العربيه في البيت
ماشي يا عم اعمل فيكوا ايه؟
ما تصبش.
نفرض بقى ان العسكر وحشين والنخبه وحشين.
هنجيب
انتوا بقى ايه دوركم؟ دوركم
منطق.
وانا اشكو
هو لا اشكو ونؤيد في بعض الاحيان.
دول الجنس يريدون ولا تزيد. عشان احنا انتوا ايه؟ دوركم فعال.
عمل سياسه في الجامعه يعني يطلع بيه زي ما كان ربنا
حل كويس. حل الامن اللي سيطر بيه على
زي الانابيب المسؤول والله ده الحل هيرجع بس هم الاثنين ساقوا بعض الجامعه مش عارفه بعض دلوقتي.
يا باشا.
Okay. Let's مواصل. To answer زي ما ذكرنا the how long question. الأول we answer this is the one question. Okay, so the answer the how long question, and to reach to this stage where we develop the final schedule, this is what we do. Define the activities, تعريف activities, sequence them to get the logical relationship, estimate the resources needed to do the activities, then estimate the duration. There is something here that happens when we estimate the duration, okay, or sorry, the resources and estimate duration. We can also go back again to estimate the resources. It's a cyclical process. يعني ممكن الديوريشن يأثر على الريسورسز والريسورسز تأثر على الديوريشن. Sorry, and then finally we put it in our calendar, the project schedule, and this is where we have the final layout of our project. Only here I can go to management and tell them this project will be delivered on this date after I consider everything here. Okay, so now we're just going to look at some of the tools and techniques for each of these processes. So let's look into the first one, define activities. So here we spoke about decomposing, coming up with the activity list. Definition of an activity, تعريف الactivity هو ايه في project? An element of project work that requires an action to produce a deliverable. This is a definition, and this is again one of the questions you can get in the exam. تعريف, what is an activity? An activity is an element of project work that requires an action to produce a deliverable. ده تعريف الactivity حسب البيمبوك. Okay, and you have to memorize that definition. Okay, حسب البيمبوك اللي هي المرجع بتاع project management. Okay, I think Bashmandis will circulate the soft copy to everyone. Okay, the activity typically has an expected duration, so we don't have an activity that goes on and on and on and on forever. لازم يكون عندها set duration. Exactly, and it usually consumes cost and resources. So again, I cannot have an activity that doesn't consume resources, but sometimes we have that because we mix activities with milestones. So what is the difference between an activity and a milestone? A milestone is an activity, but it has a duration of what? Of 0 days. So, a milestone is an activity, but with a duration of 0. Why? Because it's what? لأن هي لحظة. مش كده. So when you say the opening of the company, لحظة الاوبننج it's an event مش كده؟ an activity has a duration 0 because it happens كده وخلاص right? So that's the definition of a milestone, an activity with a duration 0. Okay? So these are examples of activities, and it's very important that you, as if you're a team leader, for example, of a company with many project managers, you have to have some protocols for naming activities. Now, one of the basic protocols is activities should always start with a what? Revise, dig, reserve. Starts with what? يعني تعريف الاكتيفيتي نفسها او التعبير عن الاكتيفيتي should start with a verb. فعل. Okay? So this should be common practice. So activities should always start with a verb, and not any verb. It has to be an action verb. عارفين action verb يعني ايه؟ What's the difference between an action verb and a normal verb? An action verb.
عبر عن حركه زي
Okay.
مثلا نقول مثلا توليد وتركيب مش عارف إيه.
So بالعربي what do we call them بالعربي؟ action verbs. فعل متعدي مش كده؟ فعل متعدي فعل وفي فعل ايه؟ لازم. ايه الفرق بين الفعل اللازم والمتعدي؟ الفعل اللازم له فاعل فقط، اما الفعل المتعدي له فاعل ومفعول به. Okay, so this is an action verb. طيب give me an example of فعل لازم. الموضوع قلب.
مثلا نام الرجل.
ايوه. بالضبط ده فعل
الماضي والرجل هو الفاعل.
بالضبط ما فيش مفعول به. طيب فعل متعدي
مثلا ضرب الرجل ولد.
ايوه ضرب الولد الكلبه. اوكي بالضبط. انما الرجل عزيز الاخ علمي ولا Okay, so activities has to start with an action verb, something to be done. So that's why it's very important to name your activities in a very intelligent way, so they make sense. Okay, so when people read it, they understand what they have to do. Okay, so these are general advice on how to create your activity list. Okay, gather inputs and resource material. Decompose each word package into WBS into activity. Consult record of similar projects, and that's what you guys do when you tell me, oh, from experience we do that. So what experience do you have is you have previous similar projects that you build on, okay? And maybe you have templates for all your plans now. All you have to do is just change it a little bit here and there. Consult SMEs. SMEs, subject matter experts, about unfamiliar activity. So if you're a project manager and there's an area that you don't have any experience in, consult with the experts. And it's those people who know, and ensure that you list all necessary and sufficient, complete everything you list will sufficiently and successfully complete the work, making sure you have everything in place as your activity list. Okay? Once we define the activities, then we sequence them to know the order of our activities, and we end up with what is called a network diagram. Like we've seen, which one goes first, and the network diagram goes from left to right. Okay? So in this network diagram, we have what is called activity dependencies. So if I have activity 1.2, dig the foundation, for example. An activity 1.1 is to pour the cement, right? So can I put the cement before I dig?
No.
Right? So this is called a mandatory relationship. يعني علاقة إيه؟ mandatory بمعنى مش وطيدة لا mandatory إجبارية. Exactly. So you have to do this, then this. It's mandatory. Okay? Sometimes it's discretionary. So some activities, so let's say for example in IT, let's say, develop the program, and the activity is develop the manual for the program, for example. So I can do this first, then this, or this first, then this. Discretionary. يعني اختيارية. Okay, yeah, so you have the flexibility of doing this and that. In your construction project, do you have many tasks like this, activities that you can do one before the other, it doesn't matter, or most of the relationship are mandatory?
Something also.
Yeah.
عمل الخارجي عمل الداخلي.
Okay, you can go parallel. Okay.
Same project, maybe one zone here, one zone here.
So you have some flexibility.
Yes.
You have some flexibility. Sometimes you have what is called an external dependency. An external dependency means you depend on input from outside the project activities. I.e., I'm waiting for the construction permit, for example. I cannot start work until I get the approval, right? Now, during your project as well, sometimes you're waiting for the client to make a decision on something. So again, this is called an external dependency. So you just have to wait until that external approval comes.
Some machines come from outside. You should wait up to
yeah, but that will be included in the plan. But here we're talking about things related to decision making, approvals, more than delivery dates. And such like that. Yeah.
This is we're talking here about activities, right?
Yes, we're talking activities.
Approval on activities or the duration of activities?
No, on activities. On activities. Yeah, on to start an activity. Yes.
Some activities have depends on external things,
Yes.
hidden things,
Exactly.
which is holding the activity to start.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So these we call activity dependencies when we talk about the network diagram that we have seen earlier. Okay. Now, specifically in civil engineering or in construction business, we also have something called the activity relationship or precedence relationships. Okay, so we have, let's just look into this example, activity A and activity B. Okay, you can have one of four relationships between those two activities. These are finish to start, finish to finish, start to start, start to finish. Right?
Block work process. Once you finish the block work,
this is called a what? Finish to finish, finish to start. So the most common one is a finish to start, right? So it means I have to finish this completely before I can start this one. Okay? And then you have the other relationship. Can you give me examples of the others?
Finish to finish.
Like example, block and the plaster.
Okay.
You don't have to finish all block to start the plaster.
So that's called what? A finish to finish.
For example,
Start to plaster could be start to start.
Could be start to start.
This is okay.
Okay.
You want to next step, for example, finish the ground floor level and stop the buildings.
Okay, that's called what?
Finish
A finish to
to finish.
finish. So you can't finish this unless you finish that.
No, you have to finish the structure on the ground level. And
You can stop the
recording system.
Okay.
You don't need to go finish on the ground floor and the system together.
Right.
But I understand you don't need to wait until the first activity to the finish.
Exactly.
You can start in parallel, but
That's
at a period interval.
Yes,
Little
exactly.
interval.
Exactly.
You go little late,
Right.
but parallel.
Exactly. But this relationship they all have some good examples in the construction business. Maybe the most challenging one to visualize is the start to finish. Because the start to finish is basically a reversed finish to start. Basically, right? So, but you don't have to. Now, all you need to know about this is the four ones and how do you translate them graphically in terms of the diagram. So, a finish to start, we link the two boxes like this. Finish to start. So, we start from here, finish A to start B. So, that's a finish to start relationship. Okay? A finish to finish will go from here to where? to the end. So that's a finish to finish. Okay? A start to finish. Sorry, start to start. We start from here to here. So that's the start to start. And the final one, start to finish. We go from here. And that's a start to finish. Okay? So where you connect here and where you connect here, you translate the relationship. Okay? So if this is the start of A and this is the finish, you link finish. Okay, that's all you need to do. And you have an exam question like this. You take diagram and they tell you what are these relationships. Say it again. What is this? What is this? What is this? Okay? Right. You ever have, let's say we have activity A and activity B, this one takes 5 days and this one takes 2 days to do A and B, and it's a finish to start. Okay? Now, these two activities together take 7 days, right? But sometimes there's a waiting period between the two activities that we have to wait. Like what? Give me an example of two activities where between them you have to wait for a certain period of time.
Curing period. Like curing period.
Curing.
Yeah, curing period.
Okay.
Curing period.
Cluster and bed, you wait for what? For dry? Exactly. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Okay.
Super structured.
Yes. No, but I'm talking about the waiting period in between for curing, for drying, for these things. We call this. What's the term do we use for that period? No. Lab. Yes. Lab. Okay, so that's called a lab period. Now, this lab period is a mandatory wait. You have to wait. So if the lab is 1 day, well, I have to wait for the curing. But now I think there is technologies, right, for the curing that it can happen in hours. But not much people
Curing government is there, but many consultants don't approve.
The majority don't approve it. Why? Why? It's not safe.
No, it's not a matter of safe.
It's safe, and they know how to apply it and the correct time of no problem.
Right.
Even the normal curing gun is a problem.
No, actually, it's a kind of holding the wash.
Right.
If you apply a curing compound more than water, I believe the curing compound will want the wash. But it's subject to the approval of the consultant. They don't really do accept because they don't have this exercise. They have a history.
So is the consultant's call?
Yeah, it's called. They have the authority to say yes or no. So put it. But because some consultants have the reference for the
This is the point. If you not properly apply, if you in some area, a small spot, this area will dry out. If you not apply uniformly,
So it's a quality issue. But I think now there's a special kind of cement also, right? Which you use very
like underwater
Yes. Because in Dubai I can see them, they build these buildings and they build a floor a day. No, a day. No? Okay.
Stripping
They have
more for more.
Okay.
More advanced, more this gentleman will explain.
All right.
People is some additional to modern. This professional way is
Curing?
no. What's that?
Okay.
Because it's some additional.
They use new technology or they use different techniques? New technologies? Okay. Alright. Okay, so the lag is usually a mandatory waiting period between the activities, which makes the activity longer.
But in a schedule, it is not visible.
In the
When
schedule,
you make a schedule,
it has to be visible.
it should be visible.
It should be visible.
It should be
Yeah. It's not visible in terms, it's not an activity, right? But it should be visible in the duration. Yeah.
It has there. Yes, but it will show the activity. You will find some other activity on the tagging area.
Yeah.
But the lag will be there for particular activity.
Okay. Now there's a difference between a lag and delay. You have to be careful here because some project managers will tell you, okay, I will do this activity, it will take me 4 days to complete, and then activity B will take me 3 days to complete. But here there's a lag of about 1 week. I'm waiting for approval from the management. Now is this a lag?
It's a delay.
It's not a lag. Right? Now you should either include this here or here, but not put it here in the middle. Okay? Because getting the approval from management is part of your work as a project manager. Right? Don't get rid of it and say it's not my responsibility. I'm just going to give it to the manager and they have to say yes or no, and how long it takes, it's up to them. If you start tuning your brain into this wavelength, all your project will be one big critical path. Everything will be delayed. You have to have ways to influence that. So management decision is not a lag at all. Okay? Now, this is lag. What's the reverse concept of lag? So lag makes things longer or more delay or longer in terms of period. We have another concept which makes things shorter. When we bring B and we start B here before A finishes, we call this what?
Overlapping.
Lead. Okay, so lead, so if this takes 5 weeks and this takes 9 weeks, if we have a lead of 2 weeks, how long will we finish this? 12 weeks, because we start 2 weeks before A finishes and we gain 2 weeks. So instead of 14 weeks, it becomes 12 weeks. So lead. Now, can we always do this?
So it's because fraction sometimes.
Depending on what?
The duration of the activity.
You can make the structure and then make the robot.
Okay, let's hear باشمهندس.
يعني هي depending مثلا صح النيتشر بتاعت الاكتيفيتي اكزامبل مثلا مستر اسامه سيل بلوك بلاستر هذا finish to start لا I disagree يعني مثلا I have start to start block in some area very early okay so I can start partially I can start the plaster in this area this is depend on the experience of the project manager and the team and this is a tool of the project manager يعني start should be in the program. This is the project manager can use this technique.
Exactly. So it's
Exactly. When the building is complete is finished, you have to wait until the start.
Okay, but it's up to you as a project manager to do this. But doing this involves what? Involves some risks.
Saving time.
More resources.
Any risks involved with this?
No risk.
No?
Just controlling the resources and
Negative risk or positive risk?
Negative.
No.
Threats. Okay. What about positive risks?
It is the duration of the
Exactly. Right? So when do you revert to this? When do you start doing these leads? When you want to save time? Yeah. So usually you have your plan. The boss says, no, we need to do it in a shorter time. So you start thinking about playing with your activities. Exactly. More or less?
More.
Good.
Make work like this in time like this.
Okay.
Not very cash.
Does it?
We get more income.
Why does this involve more cash?
Cash flow will be more.
But this is
Production will be
resources.
Exactly. So if I need one painter to paint the room or two different rooms, but I want to be working on two rooms at the same time, I need one painter here and one there, so extra resources, right? So that's why it involves more money.
See extra resources, but less duration.
Yes, exactly.
maybe
Exactly.
maybe ممكن يعني ممكن دلوقتي انا معيش مثلا يعني الريسورسز دي مش متوفره
بس مثلا يشرب
لو
الريسورسز مش متوفره مش هتبتدي كده اصلا. مش هتعمل بالظبط تعمل
لا مش هقدر ان انا اعمل الموضوع ده
انت بتشغل اكتيفيتيز يعني او بتحرك اكتيفيتيز يكون عندك الريسورس اللي موجوده فوق ما عندكش ملوش اي معنى كان
Okay. So that's the sequencing of the activities, needs, and that. Okay. Next, we have estimating the resources of the activities. Right. Now, when we talk about activity resources, what are the types of resources do we have?
human non-human.
Human and non-humans are what? What and what and what?
Machinery, tools,
Yeah.
material, equipment, manpower.
Right, exactly. So HR, equipment, material, these are the major resource types we have. HR, equipment, and material. And the fourth one, we just say others. Because others involve what? Cash, facilities, right? Okay. So this is how the yes, others. Okay. But usually these are the resources classifications we have in any project. Human resource, equipment, material, and others. Okay. Now, once you estimate here, remember, we say estimate, estimate. So what does estimate? What's the message sent to us as project managers here when you talk about estimating something rather than defining something? Prediction. So it means these things will change later on. They will. Will. For sure.
If you are not هو حسب الشغل اللي بيعمل لك 5 متر في المكعب في الساعه عمل لك 3
عملت استيميشن بالاكسبيرينس بتاعك عملت استيميشن كويس
اشتغلت من 100% جميل عاوز
Okay, let me tell you back. I'll tell you why estimate, why change. Okay? Now we're planning here, right? We're still planning, right? So if I say here, I estimated certain type of resources to do a certain task or activity. Okay? As I move on to develop my cost and look into my risk and my HR, let's say here I want to paint the room in 1 hour and I estimated the duration or I specified the resources for that a painter to work on this room. Okay? When I went here for HR to recruit that painter, I realized something. Okay? That these painters only exist in a country called Sweden. And to get these people, I have to do this, that. It's a long process. So my estimation here for both the duration and the resources will change. So that's what I'm saying about estimation, because this process will go on and on and on for 3 times. So that's why we say we don't commit. And that's very important for us, project managers, when it comes to educating our senior management about these things. Why? Because senior management get very upset when we give them a figure and then we come back and we change that figure. Is that right? Or it's not right? Okay? So if I send an email to my boss saying the project will cost $50,000. Okay? 4 weeks into the planning, before we start execution, I said, dear boss, actually the project now will cost $65,000. And then the week after, dear boss, actually we managed to bring the cost down to 60,000 and so on and so on. Right? They get very upset. Why? Because they don't understand the concept of estimation. Okay? And the concept of estimation doesn't mean that your cost will keep getting less or more. No, it has nothing to do with that. It just means that your cost estimation will get better by the time you move through the plan. So if we start planning today and we finish next month, okay? Today our range of estimate could be anything plus or minus 200%. Anything between that, right? We could be doubly wrong, right? Up or down, okay? By the end of the estimation period, right, our accuracy will be plus or minus 50%. Why? Because of progressive elaboration, more details until we get to a stage where we have a good idea about the cost. Management has to understand that. If they send you an email here wanting an estimate, they will get something. They want to know the estimate here, they will get something else. If they want to know the estimate here, they will get something else. It's your duty to educate them about this concept of estimation. Okay? If they don't understand that, you will be always looked at as someone who's not professional. How come you keep changing your estimates? Okay? And that's the duty of, if you have a PMO in the company, that's the duty of the project management office. Okay? Some managers are aware about that and they are educated themselves, but the majority no. They just want one figure and they want you to stick to it. You have to explain to them what does estimation entail of. Okay? So we'll just do one more. So estimate activity resources. We say here we come up with the activity resource requirements need. Now, how does that look like? This looks like this. So you have the activities here with the duration, whether they are excavation, painting, filing, whatever. Okay, and then you have your 4 columns here: your HR, your equipment, your material, and others. Okay, and for each activity, you specify the type of resources and the number of resources you need. So for this activity, I need, let's say, a crane, 1 crane. I need for example, labor, 20, okay, and I need cement, for example, 1 ton of cement. Okay, so you do the same for all the activities you have in the project, right? The type of resources and the quantity for each one. This will help us when it comes to cost, because I can just go back to my table and do what? And calculate the cost, put the rates. Okay, so 20 labors times 4 days times $100 a day will give me a figure here. Same thing, to rent a crane for 4 days will give me another figure, and so on and so forth, and then I'll be able to calculate my cost. Okay, so this is called your resource requirement sheet, and it's very useful because if you can calculate the number of human resources or the total HR, the total equipment, the total material you have, then you have a good idea about the resources you need for your project. Okay? Now, some project managers do this and then they realize we're spending too much here. So what can we do? We can outsource this bit. Okay? Maybe instead of renting a crane, we should buy one, because the rental charges are too much. Why can't we buy it? Okay, so it gives you, some food for thought. It gives you some information to make some decisions. Okay, they call this the resource requirement sheet. You can also create something called a resource breakdown structure. The resource breakdown structure is similar to the WBS, but it is something to do with your project resources. It looks like this. So in my project, the Aziz project, for example, I have HR, equipment, material. HR, I have consultant, labor, contractor, engineer, and so on. Engineers, I have mechanical engineers, 4, and I have 6 electrical engineers, and I have 12 civil engineers. Okay?
Too much.
He's already worried.
I think I got book right. I only do it just now. I don't know what to do in the second. Too much. Too much. So I don't know what to do in the second.
Okay, so this is called the resource breakdown structure, RBS. And again, it helps you to get an idea about all the things you have, even for your equipments. So you have cranes, you have loaders, you have so on and so on. What types of equipments do you have, and the number in each one. So you have everything in front of you. Okay, it's called an RBS, and most project managers do that as well. Okay, you can also use this to put a business case for senior management to either recruit more people or move some people to other projects or. Okay, that's called an RBS. Right. Now, to come up with the resources needed for your activities, right, you use your experience, okay, you are creative about it, but if you're lucky enough, right, and you work in a place, somebody mentioned that earlier when you said we have a database, right, of what? What does that database tell you? What are some of the information you have? When I asked you the question earlier, remember you said we use a database. What was that database? What's the content of the database? Rates.
The output rates of the resources.
Exactly. So you already have a list of resources with their rates.
Of course, we can give the
Yes, I have a list of all activities.
Right.
Okay, and the productivity, all the type of skill labors, calculator, pixel, normal labor.
Exactly.
What is the productivity per hour? Each single activity.
Okay, right. So that helps you a lot, okay, because it's done your homework.
Yes.
Okay. Is this database updated regularly? Yeah. So you rely on it fully. You take the information from
in
it.
terms of hours, okay, the same, but the rates for the manpower based on the market, it change.
Who changes it? Who's in charge of that database?
Changing we have
new workers
database.
in the country, they add more money for the farmer.
But is it your database, PVC database, or it's a centralized database? It's yours.
See at every project as a completed, the project manager will furnish a head office about all this new details.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so it captures, it's constantly updated. Okay, no, that's fine. But in countries like Canada, for example, UK, there's the IEEE, the IEEE, Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineering. Okay, now this institute, okay, they have a database online. It's only accessible by members, right? So if I am a project manager in charge of building a hospital in London, okay, I log into the website, okay, and I choose hospital from a drop-down menu. There are hospitals, schools, roads, whatever, right? And they ask me for certain details about the hospital. So maybe the area, the blah blah blah, a couple of key questions, and then they give me a list of resources needed to build that hospital in that duration. Okay, this is called a published estimating data.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know how will it feel.
Okay.
Nice.
It will take too much time for our Arab country if they have this time.
Yeah, which is very sad because it's not very difficult to do.
Yes,
Yeah.
not very
Right. It's just meant to share knowledge. Okay. So in this and it's not a very difficult thing to do. It's a combination of all the experience and knowledge of people done that. And this information it's giving you, it's not a detailed information. It's just a rough thing, guideline on the resources you need, the types of resources, even the type of material, the equipments you need, rough estimation of that. Okay? which is now this is in terms of resources. When we look into cost is different. The published estimating data for cost is actually details and it's legal. So if it tells you today the ton of cement is that much dollar, you don't pay 1 penny more. Okay? Do you have something similar like this here? Or it's yeah. So here the prices change. Yeah.
Supply to supply.
Supply. But there is at least is there a range, or they can charge you whatever they want.
Especially for certain products.
Yeah. Legally, there should be a range.
Steel, there is a range. Steel, there is a range. On the cement, there is a range.
Okay.
So all these factors will be considered in the estimation times.
Right. Okay. Fine. So this is estimating the activity resources. Next, we have the activity duration.
The destination and the duration.
Right. Is it PA? Huh?
Estimation and duration.
Yes, definitely. We're doing it now. We're looking at the techniques for duration. So now we're at a stage where I'm looking at my activity and I need to know how long does that activity take. Okay? We have a number of estimation techniques for the duration of the activity. The simplest one is we call analogous estimating. Okay? So we have the first one is analogous. And this is a Greek term. It comes from analogy. Analogy means something similar. So to paint this room or to build this tower takes about 8 months, for example. Why? Because a similar tower built last year took 8 months. We call this analogous estimating technique. Okay? We're talking about duration here. Right. Sometimes we use a technique called parametric. Parametric means if you're building a house that is, the built area is 50 square meters, for example, okay, 1 square meter with this specification will take 5 hours. So the 50 square mile will take 50 times 5. We call this parametric estimating. And we use the same thing even for cost as well. صح؟ المتر المربع في كده تكلفة المتر المربع. Okay? So we use it for both cost and duration. Okay? We call this parametric. Right. Then we have a third technique which is called a 3-point estimating. And it's a more accurate technique. The 3-point estimating technique says you have a pessimistic duration, you have an optimistic, and you have the most likely. 116. Exactly. Okay, and then we have a formula for that. Let's see. So, I asked Suleiman. Suleiman is a very pessimistic person. How long do you think this will take? هنا الشركة دي what do you think?
He's holding the thumb rule.
Okay, and then I went to Ihab, who was a very optimistic guy, right? Wahib, and he said, we can do it in 5 weeks. Yes, we can. Obama. Okay? 5 weeks. And then I go to Ihab, who's a very balanced guy, reasonable guy. He gave me maybe 8 or 9 weeks. Okay? So I'm working with 3 figures. Okay? I put these 3 figures in what is called a PERT formula. PERT. P-E-R-T, and that stands for Program Evaluation and Review Technique. Okay, and the formula is P plus 4M plus O divided by 6. Okay, so this is my P, this is my O, this is my M. So 12 plus 5 plus 4 times 9. Why? Divide exactly. I'm giving more weight here to the most likely, and then I'm dividing by 6. So it's an average. This is called the PERT form. Okay? So this technique is called a 3-point estimating technique. باشمهندس ليه الضحكة دي؟
الشركه دي
ما تسأل
انا مذاكر كل حاجه انا ما بتكلمش ولا اقول حاجه مذاكر كل حاجه زي العسل انا والله قلتها كده بس يعني.
Okay, so these are the different techniques we have to estimate the duration of the activities. Now, we all know as project managers that it's one thing estimating the duration of the activity plus putting extra time just in case or extra duration, and we call that reserve analysis. The reserve analysis is the duration of time you attach to your duration just in case things go wrong. However, this reserve has to be announced ethically. Meaning what? Some project managers think, okay, I can do this in 5 weeks. But you know what? I will put down 7 weeks just in case. So how long does it take, Mazin? 7 weeks. Yeah, 7 weeks. But deep inside, I know it's 5 weeks, and 2 weeks are reserved. Right? Now, ethically, I have to announce these 2 weeks. One of two ways, right? Either I will say my project total duration is this, and I'm going to have 5% extra just in case for duration and maybe 10% for cost. Or I do it activity by activity. So I'll say 7 weeks and a small note saying 5% of that duration is reserved just in case. So you have to announce your reserve percentage. Huh?
Sometimes some companies do that also.
Yes.
They make internal schedule.
Uh-huh.
If they have a project, 12 months project,
Uh-huh.
they make internal schedule for the others.
Right. Exactly. But this is important, and the essence of all this is trust. Trust means what? If I'm a project manager and I know if I tell my management that it takes 8 weeks, but I'm just going to put 10 weeks just in case, they will tell me, no, put 8 weeks. Right? So if I feel this way, then I'm going to tell them 10 weeks. 10 you should? Yes, 10 weeks. Right? Because there's a lack of trust. Okay? So it's very important that you have to develop that kind of, okay guys, we're project managers. We know things will go wrong. Things will get delayed. Okay? Now, either the management will have a total percentage, which is standard percentage in all your planning. So whenever you submit the plan for 8 weeks, management adds 2 weeks, just in case. This could be a company policy. Okay? Or it could happen at the project manager's level. But you have to work. Now, the reserve analysis, okay, is not standard because it includes an element of what? Of risk of the environment. So if I know I work in an environment where decisions take longer to make, where money takes longer to arrive, where if you work in a country like Sudan, for example, it takes ages for things to arrive from overseas because of the embargo. So if you want something from Germany, it has to go to China, from China come to Egypt, and from Egypt come to Sudan to break the embargo, for example, right? So if you work in that environment, your reserve analysis will be different from someone working in Dubai, for example, in a free economy, or in UK, or in Canada, or in US. Okay? So this is something has to be done within the organization policy. Okay? Once you have all these things, you come up with your activity duration estimates, depending on which technique you use. Now, for you guys, which technique do you use for the duration estimation?
Analogous.
Analogous, yes. So similar activity. Yeah.
From the
Exactly. Huh?
From the experience,
Yeah.
it's from our experience.
Yeah, but they have from the database. Yeah. So that's called analysis.
A person,
Uh-huh.
how many blocks he can take in a day?
Uh-huh. That's parametric.
Person, how much plaster,
Uh-huh.
how much square meter he can complete.
Uh-huh. So that's already.
The database calculated the book.
Okay. Okay.
It's blast.
Uh-huh. So it's a combination between analogous and parametric.
Country to country, it's very hard. Database is there.
Okay.
During our study time,
Right.
there is a database.
Right.
Think about the command.
Mm.
Come on, accelerate. If I take my power.
Right. بس يعني زيادة just in case. Huh? Okay. Anyway, we finished. So we'll stop here because in develop schedule, I want you to be fresh because we'll do the critical path calculation and we'll do that tomorrow, inshallah, when you are fresh. Okay. So we'll see you tomorrow. Okay.